Hi everyone, I'm Ann with Kai Dragon Gardening and Cooking Channel, and today I'm going to talk to you about why plant perennial veggies in a garden. I've got my little helper here, my Wendy, my wander dog. She doesn't stop. She stays out in this garden protecting her mama. And she sits like a good girl most of the time. Ain't that right, baby girl? Anyway, let's get started. Gotta put on my readers. First off, perennial veggies are more disease resistant. They're reliable producers, which are more resistant to pests and the weeds because they're already established. They require more frequent harvesting since they thrive producing abundant and nutritious crops. They kind of take care of themselves, so they don't require annual planting, therefore more low maintenance. Now, I'm going to stop right here a minute though to remind you of one thing. A lot of people believe in good crop rotation in a garden. And I thoroughly believe in doing that too. However, there are some things that you can do to help restore your garden beds if you don't rotate your crops. If you're planting perennial veggies, your plants are going to be established in the area that you put them into. So if you're planting them in a raised bed, that's probably where they're going to stay in, unless you're transplanting them to another area of the garden. Strawberries. I have a bed dedicated to strawberries. We had lost all our strawberries and we had to start over. Now that it's full because we focused on runners instead of fruit this year, so next year we can focus on the fruit. Hopefully. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that they survive through the winter. But I am a firm believer in planting as many beans, peas, and marigolds as you can in your garden to help put the nitrogen back into the soil. They are a cover crop that helps your soil rebuild itself. So by adding those plants every year, because they're not going to come back up on its own, they're not perennials, they will help restore your soil. So it's a good thing to remember. Make sure that when you are getting out your seed packets or you're getting ready to order seeds for the next year, that you add marigolds, beans, and peas. There are so many different types of beans that you can grow. And the one thing about beans, after you harvest them, and I'm not talking about green beans, I'm talking about other beans like the cowpeas and the lima beans and the black beans and stuff like that. When you harvest them and as they're dried out, they will keep for a long time, as long as you put them in a container, airtight container, cool, dry place. They will last a long time. So that is one of the vegetables. It's a go-to survival vegetable, and you do want to keep that in mind and plant them. And if they need a small trellis or fence or something to grow on, plant them on the edge of the garden bed, or a walkway or whatever. They'll grow up above your head. They're not going to hurt anything, and they will help work what the soil needs back into it. So I just wanted to remind you that beans, peas, and marigolds, they're kind of a must, and make sure that you put them all around your garden. Asparagus is an example of a perennial veggie that's already established at the beginning of the growing season. We're talking about spring. Usually ready for harvest by the time you plant the first round of annual veggies. therefore extending your harvest time considerably. Perennial veggie crops not only serve as food for consumption, but also a great source of beauty for landscaping. Strawberries, believe it or not, they make wonderful ground covers and erosion control for slopes. Some perennials can help fix nitrogen problems in the soil. They provide shade for other crops, a habitat for your pollinators, and create excellent fertilizer for the soil. They serve multiple purposes that are going to enhance your garden. Some perennial vegetables are known to enhance the health of the soil for the surrounding plants and themselves. This improves soil structure, moisture control, the organic matter, and porosity. As leaves and roots decompose slowly, more organic matter is naturally added to the soil. While as the plant is maturing, they build up the topsoil and sequester the atmospheric carbon. So did you know that potatoes are actually a perennial veggie? So if you actually leave one in the ground, it's going to come up. So sometimes people don't always get all their potatoes out when they're harvesting them, and they'll say, where did this come from? Well, it's going to come back. So due to the problem in North America with diseases and pets, you need to rotate them more often. So that's why they like growing potatoes as an annual crop. So don't plant them in the same place. You know, a lot of people are doing the potatoes in grow bags and have had a lot of success with it. We did not have good success doing that this year, but we don't know if they either got too much sun, not enough sun, not enough moisture, going through a drought. Not sure what exact problem was, but we did keep a lot of notes on it. They did make great potato, pea, and ham soup, but they weren't anything that we wanted to rave on about as far as a potato crop. My son was so disappointed, but I looked at it as like it is a learning curve and we'll do better next year. Potatoes, it takes up a lot of space, and you got to remember the potato plants themselves are toxic to other pets and animals and stuff. Only the tubers are what we can eat. The rest of the plant is highly toxic. So that is why I, for one, would rather do potatoes in a grow bag away from the other plants. But everybody's got their own preference with that. So kale is considered to be a biennial veggie. It can survive a deep freeze when it's well mulched. It needs about 5 to 6 hours of sun. Asparagus usually takes about 3 years to become well established in a garden bed. Cover the roots with soil, leaving the bud tips showing. Designate a bed that gets plenty of sunlight for asparagus. You really do need to plan on wherever you put it, that's where you're going to leave it. So rhubarb is also a plant that requires full sun, but does best when the average temperature falls below 40 degrees in the winter and below 75 in the summer. It can be planted in the fall after dormancy has been set in. It makes wonderful pie filling, jams, and jellies. Now, when I was a kid growing up, I didn't really care for root beer unless it was in a pie with other fruit or a jelly. But just to eat it, I really didn't care for it. It was just like stringy, and it might have been the way Mom fixed it too, because she was young and didn't really know how to fix it. And there's so many different recipes out there now, and so many different things you can do with different vegetables. So there's new ways to try things. So I want to plan on adding rhubarb to our garden next year. Garlic is also a biennial crop requiring lots of sunlight. You normally plant it in the fall because it needs a month of very cold or below freezing temperature to actually grow properly. I tried to grow some in pots just for the heck of it in the summer. Didn't have any luck with it. So it really does need to be grown in the cold. Some people actually refrigerate their garlic about a month before planting to produce the cold it needs for growth before they plant it in the early spring or late in the fall. Radicchio is a veggie with a bitter, nutty taste, but also a hint of sweetness. It can be planted in the fall or early spring, and it appears like a small-headed cabbage, but the outer leaves may fall away from the center like a head of lettuce. Being a cold hardy biennial veggie, it can produce all winter in a mild year. Horseradish is a must for anyone that likes to really spice things up with their food. The large underground root of the plant is the part that you will eat. Horseradish has a strong spicy flavor. Grow it in a container or isolated area because you don't want it becoming invasive in the garden, because it can and will. Plant root top about 2 inches deep and the crowns just below the soil surface with the crown pointed up. Harvest after a few cold snaps in the fall, but leave some roots behind so it'll grow again in the spring. Artichokes require consistent and ample moisture. You can plant from seeds, but root divisions do produce better. The rows need to be about 3 foot apart, so container growing is ideal for artichokes. Use a 1 to 2 inch layer of compost when planting. Cover with at least 6 inches of straw in the fall. You want to make sure that it's well covered. Harvest in the early spring and again at the peak of fall season. Chives are very useful perennial veggie, easy to grow, great for containers and stacking planters. Harvest when about 4 inches tall before the flowers begin to bud. If you allow chives to flower, they're going to drop seeds, creating a much larger plant in the spring. Remember, the chive flowers are also edible. Watercress, is a perennial plant with heart-shaped leaves found near creeks and ponds. It needs permanent wetness to thrive. So if you're going through a drought, it's probably not going to be a plant for you. It has a peppery flavor, a bit sharp, but not really bitter. It's great in cooking, and it's also good as a salad green addition. You can grow it submerged in water though, or damp soil. It's great as a windowsill microgreen plant. So that might be something you might want to consider if you're wanting to grow microgreens, is watercress. Berries such as blueberries and raspberries need cooler weather, adequate watering, and slightly acidic soil. Make sure the soil is well draining with acidic pH around 4. Now, when we did our blueberries this last time, we pretty much dug the hole and dug the soil out of there and used more of a mulch type compost thing for the soil. They are finally taking off with the help of the shade cloth and are actually looking pretty good. So this winter I'm going to try to cover them a little bit, maybe put a teepee stake in the ground or something and make like a hot house type thing just to cover them up and protect them a little bit, or clear trash bag type thing. But they should do okay, because our raspberry plants and blackberry plants, they don't get covered and they do pretty good. So just want to remember that if you're planting berries. You also want to remember, as with most berry plants, you can get thornless plants. However, most of them do have the thorns. And the blackberries, as wonderful as they taste, sometimes suffering through getting pricked with those little, you know, the thorns. That's not so much fun, especially when I am trying to pull bindweed off of it, because that is one problem between some of the grasses that like to take over and the bindweed. Those are probably the two of the worst weeds that I have to deal with, and you are constantly pulling them. Even if I put thick cardboard down and the ground cloth before I ever put mulch over it, they still pop through, and they are a royal pain in my you-know-what. But I'm trying to get rid of that stuff so it's not choking out my other vine plants. Sunchokes, or sometimes called Jerusalem artichokes, are a member of the sunflower family. They're crunchy sweet tubers, usually used in stir-fry meals. It's one crop that I do want to try and grow next year. Some people say that you can substitute them for potatoes. Anyway, dig up the large ones in the fall and leave the smaller ones in the ground so they can come up in the spring. Plant the tubers about 3 inches deep. They should produce for many years. So they are a crop that you want to remember that's going to stay where you plant them, just like the rest of these perennial plants. But if you don't want them to take over the area that you put them in, they may be difficult to move somewhere else. Sorrel is an alternative to spinach, great in salads, and they use the larger leaves in soups. Sow seeds from March to May. The plant will come back every year as long as you don't pull out the roots in the fall. Best thing to remember about these perennial veggies is to plant them once, harvest them every year, and they should come back every year forever. They're super easy to grow, beneficial to your garden's environment, more nutritious, and a lot less water dependent. So if you are going through a drought situation and you can plant perennial veggies, you are going to kind of be ahead of the ball game when caring for stuff in the garden. So they're kind of a must to save you money. Learn to cook with foods that you haven't used before. Still be able to give you that peaceful satisfaction of great garden success, and be able to feed your family. You're going to learn to eat things probably that you've never eaten before, but sometimes you learn by the mistakes you make and the food you grow, and you know, the vegetables you grow. Just trying something different, and a lot of times by trying something different you end up being a little more successful, and you find things that you like that you never knew that even existed. So plant some perennial veggies in your garden. Just make sure that you leave space if you want to plant. Anyway, just remember, make the garden reflect you. Be happy in it. Make it a place of serenity, a place where you can do your own thing and where you're feeling at peace. Make sure that you hit the notification bell so that way you know when we release more videos, and hope that you're getting something out of these videos and get some great information that you can do something great with your garden, and that you can learn from our mistakes. I have no problem telling people about mistakes I've made that's going to help somebody else do something better and be more successful in their garden. And I love hearing tips and tricks that people have done. So leave your comments below, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about us. We appreciate you. We depend on you. We're new starting out, but we're hoping that we're going to become big and successful too with this channel, and it will be wonderful someday if we can hit 1,000 subscribers like a lot of other people, and be able to get some affiliated links and things like that along the way, and even Kai Dragon Gardening merch. I'm working on it, so don't be melancholy. You're in the garden. Let us remain successful. We love you. Have a great day.